Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. For 100 years, they have been East Tennessee's leading building materials supplier. And now you can turn to them for your home improvement project. Everything you could possibly need for your project. And all the expertise of 100 years to help you pull it off. They got a great staff down there and great ownership. I mean, this is a fourth-generation company. That just never happens. That's so rare in the United States of America to have a four-generation company. Trust me, trust them. A.G. Hines Company. All right. There is a faction of the UT fan base that is already talking about moving on from Jeremy Pruitt. I heard some media folks this week saying that, you can usually tell about a guy in his second year. Well, in this case, 16 games. You can tell whether or not this never been a head coach before guy is ever going to develop into a good coach. I think that's ridiculous, personally. But, but that's me. Let's say Tennessee goes 0 for October. You lose to Georgia, you lose to Mississippi State, lose to Alabama, lose to South Carolina. All are possible. 2 of those are likely. All possible. If that happens and you are sitting at Halloween 1-7, UAB coming up, what does the UT administration do? Because I don't think that's just going to be Philip Fulmer making that decision. I think that's going to be the administration. But if you're 1-7, at that point, to save the recruiting class, you're either going to say, we're in with this guy and the vote of confidence, or do you make a move? What do you think they do?
I don't think they can afford to make a move, and I think you just say, go have a good November. I think you got to give him a vote of confidence, and then next year you make the tough decisions if you have to make tough decisions next year.
Afford meaning cash-wise? Or afford meaning what it would do to the program?
I'm talking program-wise, buyout-wise. Because Tennessee's just going to push the panic button again, and it's going to set the program back again. Is the way it seems to happen here.
The buyout-wise, though, what's the bigger expense? Paying $15 million to get rid of these guys, or letting Neyland Stadium sit half empty for 8 games?
And restaurants said half empty, and hotel rooms said half empty.
I'm not arguing that way. I'm just throwing out I'm adding variables to the equation that they're going to have to consider.
My vote is you got to wait until next season and see how that goes. As tough as that is to do in this win now.
That's what you would do. What do you think UT will do? And doesn't part of that come back to what Philip Fulmer wants to do? And there's been a lot of national talk about Philip Fulmer.
I think that's the key to the whole thing is I agree with Chuck. You can't afford to get rid of him financially. You can't afford to get rid of the staff. So I think the staff stays. He would go, and
if
Coach Fulmer would be an interim coach for a couple of years.
A long-time interim coach.
A little bit more.
More than the Barry Alvarez,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's no good options. That's what you're going to have to do. And I think ultimately, if you make a change, if you make a change, you're going to make it worse. And I'd like to think that the folks in charge of Tennessee recognize that the churn and 3 head coaches in 4 years is not how you run a successful program. And you have no choice, I think, but be patient. I think you're right. After 2 years, I just, barring something insane, I just don't think you have that option. You have to go at least 3 years, because if you go 2 years, you're opening up a coaching search. You're bringing it up to a group of candidates and saying, hey, this guy didn't get it done in 2 years. You're inheriting kind of a mismatched roster. But if you don't get us back to 7 or 8 wins in 2 years, well, you saw what we did to this guy. I mean, good luck. I mean, you're going to get Mike Gundy another raise, and you're going to end up with your 6th choice.
Well,
that's what's going to happen.
You're also going to have to tell this nobody who would be willing to take your job, never mind all the social media hate you're going to get from Tennessee fans. That has to weigh into it too, because that obviously cut the Schiano deal
And I would
down.
normally totally 100% agree with you can't make a move, but see, I think losing to Georgia State put that on the table.
Yeah, that's what it said.
That Georgia State loss made it was such a bad loss that I think that's the reason that's on the table.
You're not wrong, but I just think people forget that it can get worse. That's the
No,
thing.
it can
The
get worse.
question is, how do you fix it? I don't disagree that Georgia State's a huge problem, but if you make a change, you're making it worse, and I feel very certain about that.
Well,
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying they could go ahead and pull the trigger.
Unless you hit lightning in a bottle. But the odds of that are the odds of winning the lottery. Some teams do it. It's very rare. Josh, what do you think they do if he's at 1-7? You think they support him, or do you think there's a change?
I wouldn't think there's a change, because that would be in the middle of year 2. But I can't imagine there was a complete vote of confidence at that point. I would think it's more of an evaluation statement. Also, questions I would have, Are you going 1-7, also losing by multiple touchdowns, where not against Alabama and Georgia, Mississippi State and South Carolina are coming into Neyland Stadium and embarrassing you? That makes it more difficult. There also becomes the recruiting question. If you're 1-7, you're not getting the 4- and 5-star guys that are out there undecided. You might not be keeping a lot of the 4- and 5-star guys that are committed as well. Everybody, including Harrison Bailey, comes into play at that point.
I started to say that's the one. That's the crown jewel, and everyone's looking toward Harrison Bailey. If this thing goes far enough off the rails, you're going to have a hard time keeping him.
And that's why it's so important to go get a win or two in October.
I think they'll get one. I do. I think they'll
That's why
steal
that
one
is
somewhere,
so,
but I don't know which one. We'll discuss that a little bit later. When we come back, though, what advice, bad advice probably, but what advice would we give to Jeremy Pruitt? Think, what would we do if we were in that position? I'll let these guys tell you anything they want to throw. All right, come on back.